Jana Vallabha Givaradari Yasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Namachar Haida Stakwa Gijai, Prams of the Host Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Siddhvaita Gadada, Shri Gaur Vasturan Gijai, Shri Sri Radha Krishna, Gopa Gopa Shama Kunda Radha, Giri Govardhan Gijai, Vrindavan Dhav Gijai, Navaduttam Gijai, Gang Jamuna Tulasi Bhakti Devi Gijai, Ananda Kodi Vaishnava Vrinda Gijai, Samavetta Bhakta Vrinda Gijai, Go Premanandi. All glories to the Son of the devotees, all glories to the Son of the devotees, all glories to the Son of the devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10, Chapter 47, verse 34. Yat Vaham Bhavati Nam Vai Dure Varate Priyo Drasham Mana Sanikarshatam Mad Anujana Kamyaya. Yet, the fact that tu, however, aham, I, bhavati nam, from your, vai, indeed, dure, far away, varte, am situated, priya, who am dear, drisham, to the eyes, manasa, of the mind, sannikarsha, of the attraction, artam, for the sake, mat, upon me, anujana, for your meditation, kamyaya, out of my desire. Translation, but the actual reason why I, the beloved object of your sight, have stayed far away from you is that I wanted to intensify your meditation upon me and thus draw your minds close to me. Purport, sometimes that which is close to our eyes is far from our heart and mind, and conversely, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Although apparently going far away from the gopis, Krishna was bringing them closer to him on the spiritual platform. When her lover is far away, a woman thinks of him more than when he is present before her. According to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, the same holds true for men who become more absorbed in thinking of a beloved woman when she is far away than when she is present before their eyes. Because your minds are totally absorbed in me and free from all other engagement, you remember me always, and so you will very soon have me again in your presence. Although some gopis had to remain in the cowherd village and could not join the rasa dance to sport with me at night in the forest, they were nonetheless fortunate. Indeed, they attained me by thinking of my potent pastimes. Sukadeva Goswami said, the women of Raja were pleased to hear this message from their dearmost Krishna. His words having revived their memory, they addressed Uddhava as follows. The gopis said, it is very good that Kamsa, the enemy and persecutor of the Yadus, has now been killed along with his followers. And it is also very good that Lord Achyuta is living happily in the company of his well-wishing friends and relatives, whose every desire is now fulfilled. Gentle Uddhava, is the elder brother of Gada now bestowing on the city women the pleasure that actually belongs to us? We suppose those ladies worship him with generous glances, full of affectionate, shy smiles. Purport, the name Gada Guraja indicates Krishna, the elder brother of Gada, the first son of Deva Rakshita. She was a sister of Devaki's, who was also married to Vasudeva. The gopis, by addressing Krishna in this way, indicate that he now thinks of himself mostly as the son of Devaki, the implication being that his connection with Vrindavan is now slackened. Because of intense love, the gopis could not stop thinking of Krishna for a moment. The actual reason why I, the beloved object of your sight, have stayed far away from you is that I wanted to intensify your meditation upon me and thus draw your minds closer to me. So after giving his analysis of the position of the Lord and how he's all-pervading and how one can see the Lord everywhere, especially if one practices Sankhya or yoga, meditation, etc. Here, Krishna introduces something else, which is indicated by the word tu, which indicates something a little bit different. But so, even though this is so, I'm separated so that you will concentrate yourself on me more through your mind and think of me at all times. As is explained, in the absence of a person, one thinks of the person more. if one is attached to that person. So this is the reason he gives for separation from the gopis. At the same time, it of course also indicates a little bit of a solution to this problem of separation. By constant meditation upon the Lord, then one can actually feel the Lord's presence. Just as the yogis or whatnot, by their thoughts and meditation, can understand the Supreme Lord everywhere. So the gopis also, by thinking of him, can feel his presence. This, of course, on one level is the continuation of the idea that they should become yogis or gyanis or whatnot. So that's not so suitable for the gopis. But if we take the other meaning, that actually Krishna's always present in his uppercut pastimes, then this also is a solution to the problem, because by thinking of Krishna, one can enter into those pastimes, and then Krishna's there. So even though on one level they're in the prakat pastimes by meditation and separation, then they can enter into the uppercut pastimes, and then Krishna's there. So this provides some sort of solution to this problem of separation. They can actually be with Krishna by meditating upon him intensely, even though in one form they are separated from him. So this provides some sort of consolation for the gopis. So it's not just there's some internal manifestation of the Lord, but actually he is not there. They actually enter into the pastimes where he is present, in another form, of course. So in this way there can be some sort of satisfaction to their dilemma at this point in time. So, and then he promises, actually, by this absorption in me, then you will see me. So of course we know that externally he didn't come, because even after Kurukshetra, then he promised again, and only after killing Dantavakra he actually went back. So this doesn't make too much sense from that point of view. But from the idea of meditating on Krishna, entering into his uppercut pastime, there's no problem there. So in this way the promise here is fulfilled also. And then he mentions how some gopis were separated from Krishna during the Ras Leela. Particularly this will refer to the first day of the Ras Leela, where some gopis were locked in their houses and prevented from going. So he says here, they attain me by thinking of my pastimes. So the explanation given is that these gopis were not qualified to join the Ras Leela because they were at the last stage of sadhana, we can say, or they were not quite on the highest level, and there was some impurity or obstacle. But by that separation, their desire for the Lord and their concentration upon the Lord burned up the last obstacles and impurities in them. And then they attained spiritual bodies suitable for the pastimes, and then they were allowed to go. So therefore this illustrates the fact that by intense meditation or thoughts of the Supreme Lord and his pastimes, one can attain the Lord. They didn't attain the Lord because they were locked in their houses, but by that intense meditation they became qualified because they burned up the impurities and they attained the highest level. So this is a glorification of intense thoughts of the Supreme Lord, or intense meditation, and how it can actually qualify oneself for the highest levels of So this is actually true. Of course, there's a little bit of a debate. Which is better, thinking of the Lord or glorifying the Lord? Meditation or kirtan? Now, of course, from our point of view, Lord Chaitanya's move was like kirtan. Kirtan's more powerful. Yet, we'll find in scriptures, and here even, we'll find a glorification of the process of meditation on the Lord. This is also a very powerful process. Now, in sadhana bhakti, of course, kirtan is easier, and meditation requires higher qualification, because meditation means thinking of the Lord without any distractions for a long period of time. And most people can have distracted minds, so they cannot meditate properly. So, therefore, definitely in the stage of sadhana, kirtan is a more powerful and practical process for everybody. Some people, of course, like yogis, they will glorify the process of meditation and controlling the mind, etc., as a very powerful process. If they're qualified, fine, they can do that process. And through that, they can actually attain the Lord. By meditating on the Lord, one can attain the Lord. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you think of me when you die, you come to me. So if you have a powerful mind, you can think of the Lord, you go to the Lord. So mental efforts are also very powerful, definitely. But to attain that state of concentration is a little bit difficult, so we have to do practice, and therefore the yogis practice for a long time. Now, if one is in the spiritual world, then of course there is no need to practice anything. No practice of kirtan and no practice of meditation. These practices are not practices, but they're actually simply symptoms of one's prema. So one glorifies the Lord out of prema, or one meditates on the Lord because of great attraction to Him. That's all. So there's no sadhana to get rid of impurities or to progress or whatever. However, at the same time, these different activities act to increase the bliss at all times, even though everything is eternal and there's no contamination. The spiritual world is very active, and there's always an increase of bliss. So the processes of kirtan and meditation there act to increase that bliss. So here we see that thinking of the Lord or meditating on the Lord's pastimes is a powerful means of invoking the presence of the Lord even if He is absent. And this will give great joy to the individual. We do see, however, that in separation from Krishna in the Ras Lila, finally the gopis sat down on the bank of the Jamuna River and they did kirtan, and then the Lord appeared. So there we see that the kirtan process is the highest of all. Of course, on the other hand, we know that the process of kirtan involves the mind also. And we also know that all processes of bhakti are ultimately to always remember the Lord and never forget Him. So there is, the two things go very closely together. So that actually is the final conclusion. The process of kirtan and the process of meditation are very close together, and they can't really be separated. We can't do kirtan without thinking of the Lord. Definitely. If we don't think of the Lord and do kirtan, then it's not perfect. And in the spiritual world, of course, they're always thinking of Krishna anyway. So doing kirtan intensifies their thoughts of the Lord, so they end up in a state of meditation on the Lord also through the kirtan itself. If one meditates on the Lord in the spiritual world, one experiences great joy, and that joy is expressed as kirtan also. Out of joy they want to glorify the Lord more and more. So, and in that way, they concentrate more on the Lord. So, ultimately, the two processes of kirtan and meditation complement one another in the spiritual world. We can't say one is better than the other. They go along together, and they support each other and intensify each other. So, we've had example of the kirtan
And here we have an example of meditation on the Supreme Lord. So that type of meditation on intense, not meditation as in yoga, but simply that spontaneous attraction and thought of his pastimes, absorption in his pastimes. That is the means of pleasing the Lord and bringing about the presence of the Lord also. So both processes are valid. So in this case, we have the meditation process, which also links up with the previous verses talking about yoga and sankhya and understanding your not the material body, but you're the Atma, and the Supreme Lord is present everywhere. So on a superficial level, of course, this is connected, that you use your mind to solve this problem of separation from the Lord. But on the other higher level, of course, then by meditation on the Lord, one can attain the Lord and enter into his apricot pastimes. So therefore the statement actually is quite valid that Krishna is making here. So in this way, and then an example is given of the gopis who meditated on the Lord in separation, and then they got spiritual bodies and they were able to participate in the Raslila in those spiritual bodies. So that's power of the mind, definitely. But of course, this is spiritual mind, not material mind. But on the other hand, we see the Kirtan is a very powerful process also. As when the gopis were in separation, they did Kirtan and the Lord manifested himself. So, in this way, it says the gopis actually were pleased with this message of Krishna that Uddhava had delivered. And then when because they were pleased, then they began to speak after this. And this goes on for some verses also. And in these verses we see that the gopis are still experiencing the separation and some jealousy. Because Krishna is not there, he's in Mathura, and the women there are getting the advantage of the presence of Krishna, and they aren't. So this is expressed in these verses as well.
Can you say that back on shloka from Rasulila that gopis who were not participating in the Rasulila, so they were unqualified, and after fully absorptions, they became qualified, and internally they associated with Krishna.
Well, externally also, because they got to join the Raslila on other nights, not on the first night, but after that. Other nights. So externally also they were able to meet Krishna finally.
So first night they could not attend, and later they joined.
Next night.
And can you say that there's Uddhava was trying to make them understand that actually you are not separated. You are not separated from Krishna.
Yeah. Well, of course, that's it's not exactly Uddhava, it's Krishna's message.
Yeah, means Uddhava was trying to say that actually it's Krishna's message that that you are not actually separated from Krishna. You are already with Krishna because of inseparated mood.
Well, yeah, but of course there's two levels of the message. One is the external thing that you're separated, but you should see Krishna everywhere in this world and whatever, and that way you can associate with him, or by meditation on him, then you can see him. But this, of course, is all like internal, and the gopis actually want to physically see Krishna in front of them. But if we take the second version of it, then we understand that in apricot lila, yes, they can physically associate with Krishna. By meditation, they can enter into the apricot pastimes, and there, Krishna, they can do the pastimes together.
And we can see that from your explanation we can understand that the goal of the meditation is like a kirtana. Goal of the meditation became the kirtana, means when they meditate and they start chanting.
Yeah.
Can you say that?
What's that?
Can you say that the goal of meditation is the kirtana? Kirtana is the final conclusion of meditation.
Well, as I said, the two things go together. They support each other. through Kirtan, one meditates more intensely on the Lord. Through intense meditation, one does Kirtan. So one causes the other.
But normally for meditation, it needs so much qualification. For meditation, it needs so much
Yeah,
qualification.
the spiritual world doesn't need qualification.
Already they are qualified.
Yeah. It's only in material world, the sadhana.
Maharaj spoke about the power of mind. Maharaj spoke about the power of mind. So when any devotees enter the spiritual world, the mind, intelligence, false ego does not go there. So the mind, intelligence and false ego does not, the Sukshma body does not go.
Yeah.
So when Maharaj is speaking about the power of mind, when the gopis are meditating or automatically get the spiritual body, how do you explain this power of mind in the spiritual world?
Well, in the spiritual world, the jiva has a body. And he has arms and legs and head and fingers, and he has senses like eyes and ears and nose, etc. So he can smell, and he can see, he can taste, he can touch, and similarly he can also think in the spiritual world. So he has a spiritual mind also, a spiritual body, spiritual mind. So definitely the material body isn't there and the Sukshma Surya isn't there. These are all products of the material world out of gross matter. So the jiva himself has a spiritual body made out of spiritual energy. And there are senses and mind and ego and intelligence there, but it's all spiritual, not material. So in this way, the jiva in the spiritual world has feelings, has perceptions, does activities, etc. Just as a person in this material world does it. But everything is spiritual. There's no duality between the soul and the material body and the mind, which is also material. Everything is spiritual. And everything is related to the Supreme Lord.
Guru Maharaj, in the spiritual world, the meditation or any activity in the service of the Lord is spontaneous, and there is only one aspect of serving the Lord. Whereas in the material world, we have something called as Maya, which distracts us. Is there anything called as spiritual Maya? Is there anything called as spiritual Maya which distracts, which gives distraction in the spiritual world?
Spiritual Maya, meaning?
Distraction from the spiritual service. Because there only spiritual service is there, only Krishna is there, everything is centered with Krishna.
Maya. There is Yoga Maya. There's ignorance in the spiritual world in the sense that at the pastimes, the different devotees are not aware of certain things. Like Balaram was not aware for 1 year that Krishna had expanded himself into the form of all the calves and cowherd boys. So he was ignorant. But that is not ignorance of the material world. It's the Yoga Maya Shakti of Krishna that covers Balaram, and so he cannot see certain things. So there is that type of ignorance in the spiritual world for pastimes, but no, for no other reason. Yeah, well, everything's related to Krishna in the spiritual world, and everything's for his pleasure. So even the ignorance there is for, ultimately for, the bliss of the jivas and the bliss of Krishna.
Maharaj, as per Gaudiya Vaishnava scripture means Prabhupada says we have to chant in the mode of Briplambha Bhava. So my question is, Briplambha Bhava means, so my question is, so first you have to start loving the Lord, or first you have to chant in the mode of separation? First you have to start, means we have to learn how to love the Lord, or
Well,
how
if we
to
don't love
separate.
the Lord, we can have Vipralambha, because Vipralambha is based upon loving the Lord. You can't feel separation unless you have attraction for the Lord first. But Vipralambha, of course, is Madhurya. If it's Sakya or something, they don't call it Vipralambha. It's called Viyoga, separation.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna, already the gopis are at the highest level. Then where is the question of impurity in gopis and why they have to do meditation? This question is from Vaikuntha Prasad.
What's that? Why?
Already gopis are at the highest level, Maharaj, as you said. Then where is the question of gopis have to do the meditation and then get rid of impurities and then
It's
go
not a
to...
practice, but everything, all these different sadhanas we do in bhakti are also there in the spiritual world, but they're not sadhana. So, meditation is one of the 64 angas. Kirtan, Shravana, worship of the Lord, Archana, these are all angas of bhakti that we do as practice. In the spiritual world, they're also there, but not as practice. So Kirtan is there, but it's not a practice to purify yourself, because you're already purified. Meditation is there, but not as an attempt to get rid of material thoughts or whatever. All of these things are there as, we can say, expressions of their bliss in relation to the Lord. So we can say these are called anubhavas in the spiritual world. Now we do them as sadhana, but they are anubhavas. They are, say, activities expressing their prema for the Lord.
What Maharaj, I think he was trying to ask this question maybe like, this one set of gopis, they, when they could not join in Rasalila, and they started meditating. So his question was that these gopis, unless until they are purified, how can they be in a verse as well as, in Krishna's pastime?
How can they?
How can they are in how can they are in Vrindavan as well as in Krishna's pastime?
Oh, well, they were at a very high level, almost pure. Right? So we can say they were somewhere in bhava. But they could not directly associate with Krishna because they had some impurity. So we can say they were at the very last stage of sadhana or bhava or whatever. Of course, bhava is not really sadhana, but they had some small trace of impurity. And then by the intensity of prema, then that disappeared. And then they were allowed to go to Krishna. So they obviously, then they had progressed through sadhana until they became qualified, almost qualified for Krishna. And then in Krishna's pastimes, they became fully qualified.
If someone has a little bit impurity, still he is allowed to participate in Krishna's internal pastime.
Well, bhava is the stage where you can see Krishna and you've developed the spiritual body to some extent, but there is some impurity. So that's the stage. Before that, no, but in bhava, yes.
Some mixed devotee, like in Vaikuntha, some mixed devotees appear.
Well, mixed in the sense that they've done mixed sadhana, and therefore the intensity of their relationship with the Lord is much less. But they don't have any material impurities there. They're not mixed at that stage, but they performed, let's say, karma misra bhakti. Then they became purified and they're in the spiritual world, but their position is less. So therefore, they get sarupya or sarsti, salokya, but the rasa does not fully develop, and they get maybe shanta rasa. Presence of the Lord, but they don't serve much. Well, it's not mixed at that stage, I'm saying. They perform mixed bhakti, like karma misra bhakti, and then they get a nice position in the spiritual world, but their service is not so intense. They meditate on the Lord and they live in their nice palaces and whatever like this. No, it's spiritual. But it's less attachment than those who are in active service like Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya.
Hare Krishna, there is today release of 2 books, Vishnu Sahasranama Swastra and Madhava Mahotsava. So this book was cover design and layout by Mritul Prabhu. So Maharaj will be garland. Everyone can say Hari Bol. And first copy also he is getting. Anyone want, you can come and get from Maharaj hands. Please come in line. And pay the money afterwards to Sasi Prabhu. Please come in line.